There we go. So let's start off with what hydration is for. Thermoregulation. It's basically where hydration starts and where it ends. And it allows your body, or thermoregulation allows your body to keep everything in check inside. It keeps the internal core temperature the same. If it drops too low, you go into hypothermia. If it goes up too high, you go into hypothermia. So it looks to maintain that balance. When functioning, it keeps the body cool. That's what we're looking for. We don't want to overheat when we're out running outside. How does it do that? There's 4 ways it does that. Evaporation, so we release the heat when we're out running through sweating, and different people will sweat different amounts. Radiation, so that's the transfer of heat from one object to another through infrared, and so sunlight will heat up our body through infrared. We can then radiate heat out through infrared as well. Convection, so we're releasing heat through the movement of air or water, and this is where the marketing gurus come in and they sell you their cool fit, anti-sweat, new technology clothing to pull the sweat and the heat away from your body and keep you cool. Every company has got their own take on it. So you've got, God, all the names have gone from me right now, but you've got, Dry Fit from Nike. That's the only one that pops into my head, but you get the idea. All that technology works through convection. And then the last one is conduction. So releasing the heat through physical contact. So through touch. If you put your hand on someone's forehead and you can feel how hot it is, there's a bit of conduction happening there. Now, what effect does this heat have on the body when you're out running outside? It can cause stomach stress and gastrointestinal issues. Muscle cramps, or the onset of muscle cramps, can increase. Now, this necessarily isn't down to effort. The effort cramps that you might get, or a stitch, I might say, is genetic. There's nothing really we can do about stitches, but muscle cramping due to heat is an issue that we can fix. Performance, it'll decrease in the heat. So you just, what lots of runners do is they use a summer performance index calculator. So it'll take their winter run values or their normal weather run values, and it'll convert them to summer temperatures and summer paces. So like I said, if you have a 10K pace in January or February, it's not going to be the same as the summer. And there is converters out there that will change that pace from winter to summer so that you have an accurate conversion, and you're not going to absolutely destroy yourself trying to hit those numbers and disappoint yourself as well when you don't hit them. Obviously then the heat, if you're running at that intensity, is going to cause higher strain because your body's not just working to power the muscles to get you to run, but it's also working in overdrive to keep your body cool. So it needs to be hydrated. With that comes more exertion to achieve the same performance. So if you're trying to run at a 6-minute kilometer pace, to run at that same 6-minute kilometer pace, as it gets hotter, it's going to require more exertion, more energy, more calories, a bit more of everything. How do you mitigate the strain then? There's a few ways. If you're going out for a run that's short, or you have a camel pack, you can drink early. So drink prior to the run. We recommend 1 to 2 hours, if optimal, and then drink often throughout the run. So small sips. You don't want to smash a 500 ml bottle of water, throw it away, continue running. So drink early, drink often. Water might not always cut it. If you run over a certain length of time, we're going to come into the electrolytes in a second, but you might need to add some form of electrolyte to your drink to replace the fluids that you're losing. And we can talk about sweat and heavy sweaters and what's in the sweat just in one sec. Carbohydrates, you might want to add a little bit of carbohydrate to your drink as well. You can get carbohydrate powders. Some of the electrolyte powders that you get have a little bit of carbohydrate in them as well. The one I'm thinking of is ORS. It's a small, they've got purple, yellow, and white. They are electrolytes with carbohydrate. Secret Training do electrolytes with carbohydrate. So you might get carbohydrates, that'll help with the heat. Electrolytes, obviously, and then go into a workout hydrated. So pre-hydrate, starting from the night before, hydrate overnight. So when you wake up, you're in a less dehydrated state. So when you take your water first thing in the morning, you're not taking in water to rehydrate, you're taking in water just to top yourself back up. It's like the theory of carb loading, but with hydration. Electrolytes then, what are they for? There are three main electrolytes that our body loses through sweat, sodium being the first one. It regulates the amount of water that's in our body, keeping the fine balance. If you have too much sodium in relation to the water, so in essence that you're not hydrating enough, the sodium levels are too high, it can cause the cells to malfunction. It can be fatal. That would happen when you're dehydrated. So there's too much sodium to water content in the body. Decreased sodium levels is when you overhydrate with just water. So the sodium levels in the blood and in the body are diluted. That's not a good scenario to be in either. You don't want to be in that. Actually, there's quite a lot of, I think it was the frat houses in America at one time. It was a good few years ago, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. They were all in the news for getting their pledges to drink excessive amounts of water, and a few of them died because of this. So just overfueling, they weren't doing any exercise, but over drinking water, sodium levels just plummeted. That was it, unfortunately. Second one, potassium. It regulates heartbeat and muscle function. Again, if you have abnormally high or low levels of potassium in the body, it can affect the nervous system and you'll be at risk of getting an irregular heartbeat. Again, too high or too low can be fatal. It's a bit morbid, this, sorry. Potassium. And then the third one that we're looking for is chloride. So it's found in the fluid outside of the cells, and it keeps the body, or helps the body, I should say, to maintain a fluid balance. And it jumps in with the sodium to form sodium chloride, which is what we know as table salt. And the Cl- ion is really, really closely regulated by the body, because any significant increase or decrease can be, you guessed it, fatal. Again, sorry for the morbidity here. Let's focus on sodium, because that's a big one that's always, it gets a bad press, but for endurance athletes, it is absolutely critical to get this right. General population are advised always to restrict sodium. You know, you're at risk of heart attack, stroke, disease, from having too much salt in your meals. But the recommendations for a normal person is about 6 grams. You think about what 6 grams is. It's a tablespoon and a little bit, or a teaspoon, sorry, and a little bit more. And most of that table salt will be made up of a mixture of about 40% sodium, 60% chloride. You'll get quite a lot of salt in your food. So if you look at the back, what did I look at yesterday? A squash bottle, I think it was Robinson's. The Robinson's juice mix has a little bit of sodium in there, 0.02 grams per 100 mil. That's what it was, 0.02 grams per 100 mil in squash. So you can actually get quite a lot of your sodium content as a normal general population human being from nutrition and hydration of normal foods. If you add a little bit more table salt to your meals, that might cover your daily allowance of 6 grams. Endurance athletes, obviously, training in the heat, we're going to go out and we're going to sweat more. So the recommendations are different. And here's where it gets a little bit blurred. Older athletes, anyone that suffers from hypertension, anyone that suffers from family histories of stroke or heart attack or heart disease, we advise you to monitor your heart pressure, get a professional to look at it, and just to regulate your sodium levels. The factors then that will affect the sodium that you lose through your sweat, there's 2 of them. One is the concentration, so how much sodium do you lose when you sweat? And the second one is your sweat rate. How much do you sweat? Combine those 2 together and it'll help you figure out how much sodium you lose. Now, there's no real way for me to tell you exactly how much to do this. It's very, very individual, but there's a few things we can do to help you calculate what it is. They did a study and they looked at how much sodium athletes lost in a set period. And that was the range, anywhere from 200 milligrams per liter of sweat up to 1,700 milligrams per liter of sweat. So you can see there's a huge discrepancy there. You might be down at 200, you might be up at 1,700. The average is about 900 from what they found, but they can go as low as 200, as high as 1,700. Huge variance. You'll know if you get it wrong and you're rehydrating though. Things that can affect the volume of sweat, obviously, or sorry, things that can affect the concentration and the volume, genetics, we can't fix those. Fitness levels, obviously, as you increase your fitness and as you acclimatize to the heat, you're going to sweat less because your body's more adapted, so the volume is going to decrease. Temperature, how hot is it outside? Duration, how long are you exercising? Those things will affect concentration, volume of sodium that you lose. What should you do? So anything less than 60 minutes. Now I've put a sort of caveat, a discrepancy here. Anything less than 60 minutes, the sodium that you lose, you could probably cover it in your recovery snack, in your recovery meal, or in your fueling throughout the day if you add more table salt to your food. Now no one's going to sit and weigh out their table salt. So I would say just look for, you'll probably crave it, salty snacks. You feel, your mouth will be dry. You'll feel dehydrated even though you're drinking water. This is probably low sodium and you need to replace it. Caveat to this, as you get into the summer months or the hotter months, you're probably even at 60 minutes or less, you might just want to have an electrolyte tablet. Pop it in your drink post-run, excuse me, or pop one in your drink during your run. Anything more than 60 minutes, I would say at any time, you might want to use a sports drink, mixed powder, electrolyte, anything containing sodium from about 0.5 up to 0.7 grams per liter. And again, each company will have different amounts if you look at the packet at the back. Each company will again have different amounts of electrolyte contents in the back. Most people, if you look at the concentration of their sweat, the chloride and the potassium don't really vary that much. They tend to be very, very similar. So the mixtures that you get of chloride and potassium in the electrolyte tablets are very, very similar. It's the sodium that differs by quite a lot. Are you a heavy sweater? Do you know? Are you the type of runner that when you go out and you look at your shirt or your top or your rucksack afterwards and you see the salt crystals? That means you're sweating and the concentration of sodium is really, really high. Or do you finish the run, you sweat, your stuff starts to dry and there's no crystals. There's very, very little white patches. Probably means that you're not sweating out a lot of sodium, so you'll be at the lower end, maybe down towards the 200, 300 grams per liter. So that's a quick way to tell just by looking at your clothing when you finish the run. Do you sweat a lot? Is there a lot of volume, or do you sweat less? Is there less sweat? Women tend to generally sweat less than men. Men tend to sweat more. And then certain men sweat more than other men, So are you a heavy sweater? Check your clothes. You might need more sodium than the next person, which means you might need more electrolyte tablets than the next person. You might need more than is recommended on their packet. Again, they're trying to account for people between 200 and 1,700, so they're going to go slap bang in the middle. So you might need less, you might need half a tablet, or you might need more, you might need 2 tablets. Very, very simple thing you can do is a sweat rate test to calculate your volume. Now, unfortunately, it will not tell you the concentration. The only way to do that is to go into a lab to do a sweat test, and they'll analyze it for you and give you the numbers back out. Might be beneficial for those training in the heat. I've certainly never done one, but I know if I get it wrong, and now I've learned in the heat how many electrolyte tablets to take. I just double the dose that they say. in a big 1.5 liter bottle. But the easy way to calculate your sweat rate, and I did a video of this on my Instagram. You weigh yourself before the run. You go out for a 30-minute, a 45-minute, 60-minute. Pick an arbitrary number that you're able to write down and calculate from. So usually 30 minutes, 45 or 60. 15 is probably not enough. Go out for an easy run at a MAF heart rate. So MAF is 180 beats minus your age. Run for those 30 minutes, 45 or 60. Come back. If you urinate, ideally you need to know how much you've urinated, so you'll need to measure it. Unfortunately, you're gonna need to take a cup. And if you hydrate with something, make sure you know the amount that you're hydrating with. And ultimately what you're trying to do is calculate how much you've lost just through sweat. So not through rehydration, not through urine. So you need to add and subtract those as necessary. Once you've calculated the amount you've lost through sweat, multiply it by 1.5, and that is the volume of fluid that you'll need to rehydrate with. So I lost 1.5 kilos or so on my run the other day. You need to times that by 1.5 and you'll get 2.75. So you'd need to sip 2.75 liters to rehydrate from the 1.5 loss. 2.25, sorry. You need to sip 2.25 from your 1.5 kilo loss. And 1 kilo is the same as 1 liter. It's a really easy conversion. Again, everyone's volume is different, so it's worth doing this yourself to know whether you sweat a lot, whether you sweat a little bit. And you'll probably be surprised at how much you'll lose. I had a friend message me after that video. He did a 1 hour sort of a weight hit session in his garden in Dubai. He lives in Arabian Ranches, and he lost 3 kilos in 1 hour. Nuts. So he has to replace that with 1.5 times 3. He has to replace that with 4.5 kilos of fluid throughout the rest of the day.